That was
draw
a big
down there.
train.
And the cellar, where was it?
It's over on Chuck's place. It's over on the west place there.
See,
Mm-hmm.
he must have had over there because this is a dividing line. This is the very, where the gate is down there, that's the dividing line. That's private property. It comes like that. So that's not part of the park right there. So
Oh,
he
this
must,
isn't side of the park?
unless, see the trail comes up and goes over there. So this must be, but just over the hill isn't. I think that's, I don't know who owns that. And if you go straight up the draw there on the other side of the highway, you can still see there's an old white homestead and stuff. And it has an old sign that's real faded. It says Crescent Cattle Company. So, you know, they must have owned a lot of this in here, including far down in the south half of the park.
Well, didn't they take in Chuck's land over there?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
I'm not sure.
See, my sister and my brother were struck by lightning at the house.
That's right.
And
Okay, your brother must have been up this summer.
Yeah, he was. Got lost.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
and I can remember Chuck was coming up from
Hayfield.
with the hayfield. So was that kind of down in that
Yeah,
area?
down that way, yeah. See, the horse barn originally for this place was out in here. It's all gone. Yeah.
Now, who built these barns over here? Brent?
Billy Fazell owned that.
Okay.
That big one. He
That
said
big
his
one.
brother built this one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if Chuck's place was included or not. You know, and I don't know how many acres the Crescent Cattle Company originally owned either. If you,
Oh gosh, they owned the
but I'll bet it's quite a bit because I don't know if they built this at the time you were around here, but the old lodge that sits down here, the Jackrabbit Lodge, sits way down in the south half of the park.
Yeah.
They're supposed to have built that too. All that stands today is the chimney it burnt down in the 1940s.
Well, these could be, but I didn't know that.
They say they built that is originally to bring their investors out to show them what they had,
What they had.
and then eventually it turned into a house of ill repute. They had the ladies transported in from Denver, and they had a piano and an organ up in there, and that's a real rough road going up there,
Oh,
so it
yeah.
must have been real hard to get it up there. And
Well, well,
Did-
this was a pretty wild country back in that day.
Did you know the Worleys at all? They lived
Oh
down-
yeah, Bill Worley. He was west of here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Did they take in his place?
Yeah, they took in his place.
Well, they've taken in all the Chucks. The Bill Worley place, Ellis bought that, my uncle, and lived there for years. Then he sold that off, and then he bought some pasture land west of that. I don't think it's in to the park,
Okay.
that pasture land, but it took in if it took in the Worley place, it had to take in Chuck.
Okay. Well, see, you're sitting up here, so where do you think Chuck's place would have been from? Here, maybe he was down in here, or maybe he was.
No, he's right straight west of this place.
So maybe it's just this corner over here or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
And that's where his big cellar was over there.
So then we have the old Cahill place there, and there's another Cahill cabin that sits up in this area here.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be the boys' cabin,
Yeah, that's
where they did their bootlegging.
That's where they bootlegged
Yeah.
out there and hid the money, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then the mine shaft that they supposedly dumped old man Osborne down sits. I'll find that. Sits down here. It's called the Little Annie Mine.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Yeah.
Of course,
And you know, the reports we read going through the literature say that's supposed to be 800 feet deep and stuff, but we can never find a side shaft to it, so we don't know how deep it is. Amazing that at that time somebody would dug 800 feet down and not taking any gold
with
out.
a weight on it, why
Yeah.
they'd never get it out. Did they?
And then there's old homesteads kind of dotted throughout the place. The Osborne place sits over here,
Uh-huh.
and then there's another cabin, Nobel, sits up here.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know much about him at all.
I didn't know too much about it.
And then there was supposed to be a preacher that lived in this area by the name of Cargill.
He could have been back in May too.
I don't know much about him either. And then Cummings. Did you know anybody by the name
Yeah,
of Cummings?
yeah.
Okay, see, Osborne said they thought it was Stevens that lived in that cabin, but you know, where some of the literature came, because it was all decided whose cabin was what by the time I got here, so we're trying to go back and dig up the research to find out as much history as we can. And that way, for our public, we have an amphitheater we put together programs for. So I'd like to put together programs from the early Indian days, carrying it right through
Right
the
on
early
through.
1900s to right now. And
That's
stuff.
right.
So we're trying to do as much research as we can.
I'm interested when you get that all done.
Is there any way to look inside this cabin?
I don't know if there's any way to peek in anymore or not.
There was 2 big rooms and they had something up over to divide the bedrooms when they lived here. Chicken house out in there,
Right in here, huh?
right out in there.
Okay, and
I
you
had
said there's
my-
a.
I had my tent out in there about that light pole that year summer I lived in there. They had a road going out of here that was out in there that wasn't, their road never was any good. Boy, I'll tell you, that'd take a run at it.
Is that how you used to get out to Divide?
Yeah, take that road out, and if we had big loads going out, we used Billy Cazel's road. He had a lot much better grade. I she'd like that.
Now they built this cabin, Grandpa, or was it here?
No, that cabin was moved here. That's Quaky logs inside of that. And then somebody put them slabs on, and I don't think they ever done that. That I know of.
Do you know where the cabin was moved from?
No, I don't. I sure don't. I sure don't. And the man that moved it, my uncle, he's been dead for years. He bought this place. Him and an old girl by the name of Mary Wolf had it first. And she lived on the west side of Cotton Street. It's kind of interesting.
It would be nice to look inside.
Yeah, it would.
I flip by you?
Sure. Oh. We'll get you in the video.
Break it.
You got her going?
Yeah, we've got you. You're
What are these
famous.
things here, water?
I don't know. They fucked that one. Here you can see what them flaky logs are. You there down at the bottom. Yeah. That's all you logs. Somebody put them slabs on.
Must have been Mueller.
Was it Mueller that bought the place?
And I don't know. The folks could have put, Chuck could have put them on years back too. I don't know for sure. I couldn't swear to it after I quit coming there. But I know it was all Quakies.
When's the last time you've been here, you think?
Huh?
When's the last time you were up here?
I just couldn't say.
Can't remember.
It's been a long time ago.
After the war?
Oh yeah,
After the
yeah,
war.
yeah.
20 million master culottes, and not one fits that.
Back in them days, they farming now. Across there, they used to farm hills like that. That was all farmland over there. Raised potatoes and oats on that.
All this here?
Yeah, all that's where well, about like that fence runs.
And then they had hay down here, or potatoes too.
They had pretty good hay land over west of the next draw.
Okay.
And then they'd raise potatoes and hay on them hills there.
Well, didn't Grandma have a cellar not too far from here?
A what?
A cellar?
Yeah, a little cave out here somewhere.
I thought it was kind of more that way. Maybe
I
not.
think it was in there somewhere. Yeah. These shoes are slicker than glass.
Hang on to me.
Are you getting cold?
No,
That wind died out. That's pretty pleasant.
now there's no roads goes west.
Uh-huh. There's
O- over-
there is it kind of cuts just on the other side of the Frizzell cabin. There's a road that kind of cuts to the west, and then it kind of starts working its way back the other way again.
Uh-huh.
There may have been old ones that Mr. Mueller closed down and they just grew in that we don't know about.
Hmm. Well, there was no roads went over to his place. It was
Uh-huh.
just all horse days, them days.
Uh-huh. What about in terms of wildlife? Did you ever see many elk or deer or
There were no
anything?
elk in this country at that time. Lots of deer, big deer. Yeah, there was deer then.
Had the elk been shot out already?
No, I just don't think there was any here.
So the history reports say that the herds were shot out by the people up in Cripple Creek for commercial hunting and stuff.
Well,
and then it was like around 19. I don't remember the exact year now. That the herd was transplanted from Yellowstone to bring them back again.
Is that right?
And so
Well,
now we're looking at pretty healthy elk
Healthy
herds around here.
population of
This
elk.
time of year, after they just finished the rut, there's several hundred elk on the park. And then when it snows and it gets deep enough that they can't reach this stuff anymore, they move west to along Teller 1 back there.
Yeah.
But they also use it as calving grounds. So we actually close this whole north half of the park from mid-May to mid-June for elk calving.
Well,
Walk out here and there's elk calves all over the
I'll
place.
be done. So you can't even get in on a
Not
hike
even
or nothing.
Not even foot. We just close it so they're free from disturbance.
well. Well, it's went to the wild a lot since I've been here.
It's a great place, nice and quiet.
Oh
Peaceful.
yeah.
Of course,
yeah,
today you hear the
yeah.
highway, which just sits out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, where Delbert and them lived, it's not too far, Aunt Berthy, right? Was
No. See, that was a Worley place that they owned for a lot of place. And it took in the Worley place.
Well, see, I think there were a couple different Worleys. There was Dwayne Worley. They took in his place, which kind of sits southwest of here. And then there was, Billy Worley?
I don't know.
But I think, I talked to Dwayne's nephew a couple months ago, came out, because he, one summer, spent the summer on the ranch down there, so I took him out. And he said Dwayne's brothers had bought a place a little bit further north up here, so that may be their place, and that didn't take in their place at all. In fact, probably a lot of that's turned into subdivisions anymore.
Well, there is now a lot of that pasture land that my uncle had that bought the Worley place. There's a lot of subdivision on that pasture land.
In fact, the whole 12,000 acres here is surrounded by private land. A lot of subdivisions on our borders. So, do you know how many head of cattle they raised? Or?
Here,
Yeah.
oh, they didn't have a big herd. They milked some, and then they had some stock cattle.
Mhm.
And in fact, they bought their first cows from Old Man Cahill, the Old Man Cahill.
Now, I heard the parents, the Cahill parents, were real nice people.
Oh, nice as old
It's just
man you
the
ever
boys
seen.
went bad
The
somehow.
boys went back. Lester was he was the engineer of them, most of it. And he married a fine girl, but it didn't last long. Married George Pierce's daughter. Lived in Divide. That first house where the wall is there. That's the old
okay.
Pierce house where the big barn is.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the old Pierce house. And Pierce is the one that they always got the head lettuce started in here.
Uh-huh.
Found out they could grow it.
Now, was this the window where I was looking at you?
The north window.
Right there,
Come in this,
where the bedroom used to be.
came in that north window, lighting, no. Closed down, wasn't it? I guess it's this one. Came in there and
Yeah, because the
like
kitchen was
hit
on the
you
other
and
side.
then hit a dresser and come out the window.
So you were in the house that were
In
struck
the
by
house.
lightning?
Yeah. A little cloud not any bigger than your hat.
And my brother, the one that was here this summer, we were standing at this open window.
And what's your
Well,
brother's
Grandma
name?
was fun and open the window too.
His name was Sam Cheesman.
Yeah.
Zach did,
What year was that, do you know?
That must have been about wasn't it about 1935 or 36
Yeah,
or
you
something
was,
like
you
that?
was just,
That was
well,
before I went to
he was
school.
just 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, that was before I started school.
Yeah, that's right.
Were you hurt bad? I mean,
It-
you get nailed by lightning.
It
You
knocked
surprised
us,
that.
It knocked us unconscious,
Huh.
but it damaged my eyes really bad, and it did hit my brother's too.
But it hurt his eyes turned out bad, but he's been more successful. He went a long time before he had to have his eyes operated on.
Well, we get some hellacious lightning storms in this country. I'll tell you
boy.
what.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
It's
They
real
was
nasty.
looking out the window.
Watching.
Billy Fazell was coming up here.
I thought it was Chuck.
No,
That
it's
was
Billy
Chicken.
Fazell, and our mother told him, there comes Billy. Uncle Billy, they always called him, coming up with the horses, and got to come at Joel. See,
And so that dresser that they had that had that black streak on it, that hit that dresser the same time. Then.
same time. Oh, it splintered it pretty bad.
It didn't start a fire or anything in the
No.
house, though?
No fire.
And then my brother, it burnt his eyes shut. 'Cause wasn't it about 3 days?
Yeah.
Hit.
Before he could, he would
Open.
open. I think he just wouldn't open them. They hurt so bad. He just wouldn't open them. After he'd been to the doctor, I think they tried every way to get him open them. He just laughed and wouldn't open them. And finally, he thought it was kind of funny. And finally, Uncle Tom got his old Studebaker car out there. We were going to wash it, and got him up in the front seat. And then had the hose on full charge, and he just put it against the windshield and hollered at the same time, and he opened his eyes. And they figured if he'd ever get opening his eyes and closing them, they'd done all they could do.
Where did you have to take him to the doctor at? Where was the nearest
Colorado
doctor?
Springs.
Colorado Springs. That would be quite a trip.
That's quite a trip.
Well, then Chuck had to go to Divide because he didn't have a car. So then he had to ride his horse to Divide to call,
Somebody.
well, that was Uncle Tom that I think.
I think he come in. Of course, they come out of it. And the old spring box down there, you'd hang butter and stuff in that there, and boy, it'd keep forever. And never so cold. It was always supposed to be the best spring there was up in here. And I think it was when it was dug out and taken care of.
You mentioned giving presentations on the park in an amphitheater. How often do you do that in the summer?
During the summer, usually between Memorial Day and mid-September, we give them every Friday and
Every
Saturday
Friday and
evenings.
Okay.
Lots of times, though, I'll get calls, especially over the winter, to go to groups and give presentations and stuff. You know, right now I have a general slideshow on Mueller State Park. Use some shots of the cabins and stuff and talk about who's living here. But like I said, I'd like to put together just a history one. I've done a lot of research into the Indians that were in the area, but as far as some of the homesteaders, I've been able to track down the Osborns. I've talked to Worley's nephew and now Mr. Cheesman. But other than that, some of those people are hard to track down because Cripple Creek's records are so poor. It's hard to find anything
Sure.
in the county courthouse. Of course, you go up to the old courthouse and it's so swamped anyway. You just don't even want to spend time down there because they're so busy.
And what was your name again?
My name is John.
John?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you one of my cards before you leave, so if you ever have any questions or anything.
Sure.
Okay.
Um, so then when people come out and ask, they see the cabins and ask some of the history, I also like to be able to tell them a little bit about that.
Well, Grandma had a real neat stove. I can remember that.
The oven set up
Yeah.
the stovepipe went up through the oven, didn't it, or side of it there, and it was the best baking oven you ever seen, up in the air there.
And she had this little reservoir thing that she
Put
put
water
water
in.
in it.
Heat
and then-
water.
And then, you know, when the fire was going, then she had hot water.
Where'd you get your wood from? Just back over here?
My dad cut quaky wood here. He was from Vermont, and he'd go out and the time they was here, there's a lot of these dead quakies. You just push them over, and he'd push over half a dozen of them, and he'd chop everything. And his axe, you could shave with it. Gosh, and if he broke a handle out of it, it had to be just so. He'd work on that, and last he'd work on it would be a piece of heavy glass to get that handle so it just fit exactly. But it hung just like he wanted. If he's going to hit this, he never missed the second place, he hit.
Is that going to be too slippery, Dad?
Huh?
Is that going to be too slippery?
It's slick. I'll get a cane out. I didn't bring it.
Yeah, it's in my
No,
car.
it's in the car.
Here, you hang on to me.
Yeah,
where'd
I'll
you-
make it.
Where'd y'all move from? To
Here.
here?
Kansas.
Kansas?
Uh-huh.
And what brought you out here?
Well, I had a brother that had asthma real bad, and I came out here first, and then my grandmother brought him out here that next spring, and he stayed here 2 months with me, and old Spud Kelly, you heard Spud Kelly.
Oh,
Well, he isn't in the park. He had a little place up here, and I had 2 rooms rented from him. And when my brother was coming out, he was such a drunkard that I set up a tent that summer and lived out here and took care of my brother. And he was a lot better. But they folks thought he had to come back to Kansas, go to school, and he got back there, and he was just worse. So they sold out back there farming, and then come out and bought this place. And he was a lot better here, but he wasn't cured, but he was lots better. And he couldn't even go to Colorado Springs. He just lived up here because he'd go to Colorado Springs, he's a lot worse. But he finally didn't outgrow it, he just finally just got better. After he moved down to Colorado Springs, where he got to where he belonged to the Common Labor Union and worked some.
Now, the road to Colorado Springs was over Ute Pass, right?
Yeah.
And was that just a wagon road?
No, Ute Pass was just a gravel road and then two traffic,
2 lanes.
2 lanes?
2-lane traffic there. And I know one time I loaded up a big load of hay and was going to haul down to Colorado Springs. Baled hay, I think about 5,500 pounds of them mules, and had them shod. Got down there and just made everything good, and got down there and I was just sheet ice and had brakes on the wagon. Pulled a rope there, broke the hind wheels. And when you got hit that ice, why, boy, the brakes didn't do any good, and the mules, them shoes didn't do any good on that ice. They started sliding. I finally ended up over in the rocks, not upside down, but on the side, with the hay all spilled. And it was the evening, and I unhitched the mules and drove into Manitou, and this Groves had a big barn there. They'd done a lot of horse work in. And put the mules up there and caught a streetcar over my uncle stayed there and went over to somebody to try to get them. That's just when trucks was coming in business. Get them to take a truck and go up there and get what they'd give me for that hay, and go up there and get it with a truck. And they was so cheap that the first one, I finally said, well, I'll write every bale down that ice before I'll sell for that. Finally I did go to another place, and they went up and hauled the hay down the truck, put chains on all the hay down the truck. I got the wagon turned around and thawed off a little bit, got the wagon down, stayed a day or two, and Manitou there, and then drove 'em back up. Pretty good day's trip up there,
I
the
bet.
whole mule. Of course, they'd
bet.
walk about 5 miles an hour.
Now you mentioned, Grandpa, you used the mules to build Northfield reservoirs.
Yeah,
Did you do any on Pikes Peak?
no, I didn't.
Not on Pike, just
no.
Northfield.
Billy Fazell worked on Pikes Peak every summer with his horses. Yeah, he had a good big team, and he'd go up there and work every summer up there on Pikes Peak. Just what he done, I don't know, but he went up there every summer.
Now, Divide couldn't have been much more than a few buildings at
That's
that
all
time.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the train came through, right?
Oh
Midland?
yeah, yeah.
And then it come up where 67 is now, and I know at one part you can still see the old bed where it cut in
That's right.
to the park and then went back out again.
Yeah, and they'd, that's when they was hauling over to Colorado Springs, and it took several engines to bring that up, and then it did coming up 4 Mile Hill over there again, coming this way. You could hear them puff at night there for
That.
over here just plain as could be. Yeah, I farmed a number of years out in Black Forest. Old Bowling was worked at the roundhouse down there, and he used to have to come up with a spare engine and help him get up the pass, and it would unhook him, and he'd get on the siding and take it back to the Midland roundhouse there on the west side. He used to tell some big tales about that. He'd just turn her loose and shovel coal, all he had to do. It wasn't going nowhere.
Now, straight out, there sits an old cabin and stuff in the valley right out yonder. Do you know who lived there, or is that part of the Crescent cabin?
No, that was Spud Kelly had 40 acres in
Okay,
there.
so that was Spud Kelly.
Yeah.
Now that's on private property
Yeah.
right now. In fact, I think it may be part of the Maytag property.
Well, I'll tell you who got that from Spud Kelly was a Hagen. Used to be Hagen Grain Company downtown. Young Hagen's wife got that from old Spud. Yeah. And there used to be going around that draw was a Kaler. A fellow named Kaler bought a place in there, and they was tearing down a lot of buildings in Cripple Creek, and he bought secondhand, brought lumber up there, tore down buildings, and built a pretty nice 4-room house there, and pretty good barn. And Mert Wright married his daughter, and he lived there for a long time.
It's amazing how they used to recycle the lumber, just tear a place down and rebuild it. Today we don't do that. We just throw it away.
Just burn
It's
it,
just
tear it
amazing.
down with just take a
Bulldozer.
and tear it down.
That's right.
Yeah, but they did them days.
So this must be the old
That's the old Quakey logs
logs
in
under
there.
there.
Yeah,
Nice chinking.
yeah, chinking and everything there.
I wonder who put on.
They've done some pretty fancy work making them. And I know it was moved. It was torn down and moved here. My uncle and the Wolves done that.
I wouldn't have thought aspen log would preserve that well. Considering they built
Well,
this in
they
like
was pretty-
23, and then
Yeah.
it was older
I know.
prior to that.
It's amazing how some of these old cabins, like I said, if the roof doesn't go, they hold up so well.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know whether my brother put that on or not. I just don't know. The slabs.
was it warm?
Well, when you had a fire in there, they heated it with that big cook stove, the whole thing. It was very comfortable old house, wasn't it?
I think it was.
Yeah, I don't never.
It always seemed cozy when we came up.
But it always seemed like a lot of these places were built so tight, you know, with the good chinking in it. And
That's
then,
right.
I don't remember. Was the inside lined with newspapers and stuff, or I don't remember. I've been in it once, but a lot of the old cabins are lined with old newspapers, and I guess they
Well-
use that as insulation.
Yeah. Well, that was the only insulation it was in them days. Yeah. Well, they never complained here. We can't get over to Chuck's old spud cellar. You see,
On the other people's land.
there's no road goes down through here. that's safe to drive, is it?
Yeah, in fact, I was just out here the other day in a truck, and I couldn't find the old road, so I cut through the meadow and then found it coming down there, so it must cut up and around. I went down to check that gate. Lots of times the people in the surrounding land cut the gates and come in, and we just keep checking them.
Now that ain't your gate right here. You go a little farther.
No, that's our gate right there. That's the end of the land right there, the
That
state
is?
property. Yeah, it used to be part of the park, but see, when they bought the place, Frances Hatton, one of the Osborne sisters, still owned that Osborne homestead, so they traded her some land to get that, and she owns some of the stuff up here.
She
on the
owns
north.
some of the old Cheesman place then.
Yeah, I
'Cause
bet she does.
It goes farther north. It goes way up there to that old fence.
Down below there.
Way out, down
Way
below.
out. Okay. Yeah, I bet she does, because it used to be part of the park, but I think they trade it so they can have that interior piece.
Oh,
And
yeah.
whether she still owns that or not, I don't know for sure.
You see, you went up this draw here, and I know they, over on that other side of that hill, they had quite a field up there, a plowed field up there. I didn't think that looked just right. Well, let me tell you. So it didn't, they traded that.
They traded that, yeah.
Well, this is something.
Why don't you help yourself with some coffee in there? I threw a couple cups in.
Acts like a lot of ground squirrels underneath that now. Well, it's quite amusing.
Yeah.
That things change a lot. Little old spruce trees will come up and grow out there. Oh yeah. That is something.
Yeah. Like I said today, it's real good elk habitat. They graze in these open meadows, and they like those wet meados, and then they have the forest around to
Sure.
escape
Uh-huh.
into. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't allow any hunting up in this half of the park at all. So
Well,
they're flourishing pretty well.
mhm.
There's some real large bulls in here.
Well, yeah. Except on the other side of the house. Yeah, plenty of fence here, yeah.
Yeah, so some of these I think Mr. Mueller stuck out for his cattle.
I bet he did, 'cause he ran a lot of cattle here for a while,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many he had, but I know he had quite a big herd.